Yeah, I'm Leif Olsen. I'm O2's resident landscape ecologist. O2 is based out of Calgary, Alberta, and we're a team of landscape architects and trail designers, regional planners, urban planners, and visualization and GIS specialists. And today I'm going to be talking about some work we've been doing in the city of Edmonton in Alberta over the past 4 years or so, sort of taking it through our initial work with the Breathe, development of the Breathe green network strategy for the city, and then into some sort of regional level parks and open space planning that we've done through the Ribbon of Green, and then some more recent work developing the Emerald Crescent, which is a greenfield community site. So the purpose of Breathe, we started this at the tail end of 2015, and really the city wanted to have a citywide strategy, a framework developed to help guide the management and the promotion and the programming of its open spaces, as well as inform appropriate management and development for the city's ongoing growth. Looking to double in population in the next 20 years, so there's a great deal of greenfield development going on, as well as a very quite pristine river valley system that is quite celebrated. So this shift to a network approach, where previously they really were focused on a park-by-park management approach, and we're looking to really shift into a system where the city as a whole is managing its green spaces and open spaces. So the first component was the development of an open space geospatial tool to bring together and integrate a variety of data sets from the city's various departments, both within the parks department, as well as the stormwater servicing, active transportation networks, and a variety of other school sites and educational programs that were ongoing. So we collated a new open space inventory with, they basically have almost 1,900 open space polygons within the city. And for each one of those, we calculated 124 different attributes that described their functionality. And simultaneously, we were doing a whole range of public engagement events to really try and understand what the public's interest in open space was, what the challenges they were seeing in accessing or using open spaces, as well as identifying what they would like to see developed in new areas. As well as extensive engagement with Indigenous communities, because there is a long history of historical use in this area, and as well as a variety of neighboring communities that use a lot of the river valley spaces for traditional uses. So really, this was a shift beyond a parks focus towards acknowledging that publicly accessible open space takes on a variety of forms, both plazas and federal buildings and courts and green roof spaces and whatnot, as well as the more traditionally thought of developed parks and the natural spaces that surround the city. So really, you know, the current approach that the city was taking was just on the traditional hectares per person of parkland, and it was clear to us that just simply was not an adequate way to assess whether the city was providing equitable open space. And so we really were looking for improving the way the city assesses the quality and functionality of their open spaces, the accessibility, distribution, and the connectivity between them, and then really identifying the unique contributions that each one was making to the overall network. So we're looking at shifting from just a supply measure into one that incorporates quality and functionality, accessibility and distribution, and as well as the diversity of opportunities that they provide. Accessibility, we're looking at a pretty classic catchment approach, looking at a walkable 5-minute walk and ensuring or identifying the areas that currently lacked adequate provision of accessible parkland. And looking at this, I'm just going to zoom in on some of the central portion of the city. There were obvious areas surrounding the river valleys where they had a large supply and provision of accessible open space. And then other areas such as in the center, the dark blue there is the downtown core where although they were quite near to the river valley, the accessibility from the residential areas of the downtown was really impeded in a lot of ways. And this was sort of borne out, especially when you start looking at that projected growth throughout the city, and the problem was only really going to be getting worse. So the conceptual approach we took after the first round of engagement was to simplify the discussion of functionality into three overarching themes: ecology, celebration, and wellness, that sort of captured how the public really saw the value of open spaces and allowed us to basically provide a clear way of communicating the values and opportunities that were provided by open spaces in the nearby neighborhoods. So ecology, it supports and enhances the environment and ensures healthy and resilient ecosystems, and this is measured in a variety of ways. Celebration connects people by providing places for communities to gather and thrive, so this is event spaces, picnic areas, as well as other opportunities for large gatherings that often aren't available in dense neighborhoods. And wellness is really a matter of promotion of healthy living and mental well-being through a variety of active transportation opportunities, as well as sort of more serene spaces that people can go to escape the urban hustle and bustle. For each of these main themes, then, we had some explicit functional criteria that we calculated for each open space. We assessed the water management functions, looking at stormwater absorption, provision, and purification from wetlands. Biodiversity, unfortunately, they don't have a very good inventory of biodiversity in the city, but we sort of estimated that through large habitat patches, as well as the diversity of tree cover. Waste management used providing opportunities for composting and as well as snow clearing. Climate regulation, the heat island effect through tree cover and non-impervious surfaces. Risk mitigation from flooding and slope stabilization through intact riparian cover. And food production through community gardens, as well as there are a number of working farms in the periphery of the city. Celebration, we'd look at the aesthetic value of a particular park, the public safety opportunities and the infrastructure in place to mitigate risks in that sense, as well as destination and tourism opportunities, community buildings such as gathering spaces, picnic areas, and as well as food production, Forno ovens and things like that are located in some areas, and then heritage itself. Wellness, we are looking at recreation and sports facilities, as well as opportunities for trail experiences. Active transportation, where there are more connected actual pathways and commuter routes used throughout the city. Mental health and well-being through serene spaces, and learn and play through programmed educational opportunities that are available throughout the city. And we looked then, we were trying to be as rigorous and non-biased as possible, so making sure that we understood how these various functions were correlated and rolled up into a single score for ecology, celebration, and wellness. I'm just showing the ecological results here, but basically the darker it is, the more support for ecological functions were found. And we used a tagging approach at this point where the highest class was deemed to provide extraordinary ecological functions. And so those were used and tagged going forward to communicate the values that individual open spaces provided to the residents. And then we looked at sort of a layered approach to assessing an overall green network. So we combined the ecological network, the celebration and wellness network, as well as existing urban infrastructure to provide a single green network that the city could manage as a single entity. And then we could use this to sort of clearly communicate the opportunities in particular areas, in particular neighborhoods, in terms of the kinds of functions they provide and the accessibility they support. And then we drilled down into some sort of area-specific case studies. This is the downtown area, and the flags on each park show the functionality provided by each park. A large, prominent public golf course and ecological forest area, which also provides a lot of interesting winter activities and sporting events and gathering opportunities, as well as a distributed other set of values throughout the city. And we could use this to sort of target the key deserts and key areas where additional improvements in functionality or in open space itself could be targeted. Generally, in the downtown and the mature neighborhoods, the opportunities for new park space were few and far between. So it really was a matter of promoting the idea that parks should be functional parks and not just open spaces of unprogrammed or empty space. Looking in some of the more new communities where they had a lot more opportunities, they have a lot of open space itself, but generally they've not been designed or programmed to provide a lot of actual functionality or provide a real connected system to travel within these communities. A lot of the layout of the streets and whatnot means that a lot of these parks are currently quite isolated, so we are looking at identifying areas where active transportation routes and bike lanes could provide the community residents better access. And then we also looked at some greenfield development areas. We'll come back to this. This is the Decato in the southeast of the city. And again, just really playing up that notion that the multifunctionality of the green network is what exacerbates or it magnifies the impact and the benefit of these open spaces to the surrounding city. So this was accepted by council in late 2017, by which point we'd kind of shifted gears and into another project for the city called the Ribbon of Green. And this was a sort of regional scale update to some planning work that had been done in the 80s for the city's river, valley, and ravine system. So the darker green areas were the areas that were planned in the 80s. And since then, the city has grown out to encompass the rest of the areas in light green there. And so we were tasked with the idea of providing some strategic direction and implementing the Breathe framework for the first time at a regional citywide scale. And we were looking at, starting from a cartoon perspective right at the outset when we first approached the public to begin engagement on this, to make sure that it wasn't seen as a fait accompli, that the public had a great deal of opportunity to contribute to the design and the programming and the assessment of these areas that were currently quite cherished, but for very different reasons. The southwest in particular was basically intact forest cover and riparian vegetation throughout a great deal of it. Preservation of these areas was a key component. Conservation and trail-based recreation was another important factor, and actual just destination natural recreation, bird watching and the like. Active working landscapes provided more intensive recreation areas, as well as agriculture and horticulture within the open space, the publicly owned open space itself. The urban city services and citywide attractions and additional event spaces was another important aspect. And we combined all this into a set of program guidance for the particular reaches. So both programmatic guidance in terms of the recreational opportunities and ecological guidance in terms of the broader ecological contributions. And we moved into some important sort of visualizations. Once we were sort of finalized in that sense, moving into more graphic, evocative pictures of what it could be or what it should be. And just moving on, the final stage, which is we've been working on in the last year, has been the development of the Emerald Crescent, which is a greenfield community that basically has been important to the city for a while. This concept was actually developed in the maybe about 7 or 8 years ago. The artist's sketch and the city's vision of this place as a connected open space really was the Kickstarter for the Breathe framework in the first place. So we returned to this as a case study in Breathe, and then more recently to do a finer scale collaborative workshop and to establish a shared vision of the Emerald Crescent, both with the residents, the developers, and the city to help everyone work together and sort of efficiently create this thing. We did 3 workshops: an initial introduction, determination of the metrics of success, the possibilities and opportunities in the second workshop, and then a refining stage in the third. The issue is that they already had an ASP approved for this area, so we had to somehow accommodate the pretty poor and disconnected ASP concept into a more comprehensive system. So we moved through a variety of factors and arrived at a single connected concept for the green network in the Emerald Crescent in the area, which captured the sort of key environmentally significant areas, captured all the major wetlands and wet areas, and engaged in a sort of trade-off between what could be claimed for environmental reserve and what was actually selected to allow developers to have a little more area coverage while still meeting our needs of the green network area. And then within that, we identified particular school sites, athletic fields, and other important components of the green network. Looked at targeting investment in key areas before this was moved too far that land speculation could increase the value. So helping the city save money in acquiring the lands that would be needed before the development process began in earnest. We laid out a road network and looked at where the key distributions of density through the area should be to provide easy access to parkland, and developed this draft land use concept, which we then moved into after a sort of key set of indicators that came along with that in terms of meeting the existing ER targets from the ASP, as well as the breakdown of developable area to ensure it was a profitable development opportunity. And then we brought that into CityEngine to use procedural modeling to build the buildings and the road network. Used that and exported that into Unreal, and used that as sort of our final round of engagement with the workshops and the developer communities to sort of show the value in the areas that could be created in this landscape. And what we really need to do further in this area is really to paint a better narrative with video. Right now, we're using video more as a demonstrative tool for showing what could be put in the land, but it doesn't have a really compelling narrative over time to show the development and the flexible footprint. And so that's, I think, where we'd like to see this go is bring a more dynamic approach to this, showing the lands building up over time and changing. Similarly, we can go down right to the ground floor and show more of a ground floor level. And I won't show much of this because it's a long pathway network and it just takes forever to run through. But we can also bring this in the Unreal environment. We can also bring this into a VR headset approach to give people the opportunity to see particular areas. And we've been really thinking about how we can go about making this more accessible for an engagement process. So recently we've been partnering with Pure Web out of Calgary to do a streaming-based version of this model. And I'll just tab over here, and I'll do the obligatory dangerous live demo. Oh. So what we have here is a streaming cloud-based service that's running on a big Blade server in Calgary. And this is an interactive collaborative tool. So we both have a GIS map embedded on the right and the Unreal model on the left. And so Dan here is sitting right here with it open on his phone, panning around and changing things. And similarly, I can grab the dot location and just drop us on a new area, and suddenly I can pan around and sort of showcase some particular areas in more detail. And that's something that can be accessed online at any time with a host of collaborators. So this is, it would have been very helpful for us at the time because it was a long drive up to get to Edmonton for the workshop. So being able to do these things in a more decentralized fashion, I think, is really valuable. And the interesting thing is that this isn't just limited to the map and the Unreal. You can also build in BIM model or AutoCAD type experiences. And use this as more of a tool for gaining feedback for what people might think or how people might experience the area. With that, I think we're in good time, and thank you for having me. I appreciate it.